There is more than one center to the universe. The first is the point where space collapses upon itself and explodes. It's called the Big Bang. And the others are the countless organisms which appear magically on this former fireball, experiencing themselves as I. It really makes no sense when you think about it that reality can be filled with an infinite number of centers, a universe in which every conscious being is the center and all the sounds are coming from the same location crying, "Yoo-hoo, it's me." Like so many other strange and inexplicable features of our world, we have solved the mystery of self by calling it the ego, a term invented by Freud and accepted by the mental health community. The ego isn't actually a thing at all, but simply a sensation or center of attention which swells and contracts in response to other sensations. It is a necessary and healthy part of the body as long as it does not go berserk with self-importance and attempt to dominate everything. The ego's career is actually short-lived, more like a mirage that arises spontaneously and ghost-like inside the body, and after a brief but futile struggle, it vanishes with the death of the body. This situation doesn't leave much room for an afterlife experience if the one who is going to heaven, purgatory, hell, or back to this life vanishes into thin air. However, if you accept the first law of thermodynamics, that energy cannot be created or destroyed, that's exactly what happens. In other words, the ego is an illusion which the body invented. The search for the center of the universe is based on the belief that there is something there when in fact there is nothing there. The energy which we cannot see directly contracts and expands, forming the Big Bang with its empty center and providing us with one more thing to investigate. Like the ego, the center of the universe is a fantasy that we create ourselves. Next topic, what is reality? According to physicists, the world is made of energy particles, tiny bits of light that are in constant motion until they clump together, called bonding, to form you and me and everything that we see. Since I can't make these pinpoints of light directly, since I can't see them directly, I must make a leap of faith that they are there, which becomes the foundation of a belief system. To take on such a task requires a certain amount of reckless bravado, so I would have to be already bored with my present understanding and be willing to take a chance that this new description of myself will be an improvement. For many people, the scientific assertion that the world is a mass of bound energy sounds interesting enough, but what does it have to do with me? Apparently nothing, given that nothing unusual happened to me after hearing it announced in science class or reading it in a magazine. The announcement was made, but the implications were ignored. Religion and ordinary perception had closed the books on the definition of reality a long time ago. But a few people who spent all their time thinking about such things realized that this was a monumental discovery which could not only change the course of history, but change the definition of history. If history is a continuous record of events, things happening, and these happenings are movements of bound energy, then history is a movement of energy from one so-called spot to another. If you like this new description, then put it in context with this description of the Earth as a single mass of bound energy which isn't going anywhere. Sounds kind of disappointing and funny at the same time when you consider how deeply our emotions and desires are tied to these movements. If life isn't going anywhere and nothing is really happening and the whole thing is an illusion, then what's the use in doing anything? Because knowing what lies beneath the appearances creates an entirely new challenge. It means that the rules of the game are always changing, and we are required to reconsider what we think we know. For most people, this is simply too much for the brain to handle and retreat to a safe distance. Imagine the brain trying to explain itself to itself. It can't be done. However, I can still reach a new understanding of who I am by considering the following updated description of reality. Number 1, I cannot die, but I can form a body and experience myself disintegrating as a body. Number 2, in a universe composed of matter and energy in perfect balance, no matter No matter what appears to be happening, nothing is happening. Number 3, the universe is God, and the world we see around us is God, coming into existence in the form of nature. Number 4, there is no way to achieve eternal life. I am already eternal, or I am not. There is no back and forth on this. If this is debatable, then the definition of eternal life is debatable. Let's talk about fasting. In a spiritual world, the business of fasting has always been a hot topic. According to the Bible, Jesus, Elijah, and Moses each fasted 40 days and 40 nights, which has led me to wonder about the connection between food and living on a higher spiritual plane. Common sense tells me that the kind and quantity of food that I eat at each meal directly influences how I feel afterwards, sometimes within a matter of minutes. Later, the byproducts, the unused portion of each meal after the energy has been extracted, has to be eliminated by the body soon, or it tends to accumulate. When too much waste is built up in the body, it becomes sluggish and feels uncomfortable. This is a sign that elimination has to begin before any more food can be taken in. If you continue to eat heavy foods during this cycle instead of light, easy-to-digest foods and liquids, you develop a more serious problem like colds, sore throats, and flus. If you are in tune with yourself as a body, you can tell immediately that it's time to switch cycles and consciously assist in your own process. The sooner you do this, the shorter the recovery period. Once I caught on to this cycle, I was able to reduce the number of colds to 1 every 5 years with no illness or fever for 20 years and counting. The trick is to eat only what is essential to satisfy the body's need and avoid junk food completely unless you have an exceptional immune system and plenty of surplus energy for quick elimination. Long-term fasting becomes necessary when the buildup of toxic waste is so great you must switch to liquids and prolong the elimination process to prevent serious illness. Otherwise, fasting is used to decrease the attachment to food as a source of sustenance and feel the God energy directly flowing through you. The greater the flow, the less you notice the sensation of being a body until ultimately you feel identical to the space in which you appear. Here's a topic that's relevant today: spiritual teachers and cult leaders. A cult is a shared system of belief. There are 2 types of cults. One is instructive and promotes freedom, and the other is destructive, robbing the individual of the ability to make a free choice. One of the defenses used by a cult is to deny they are a cult. The leader of a cult demands unquestioned obedience and/or to be worshipped outright. Cults tend to form because we don't know who we are and are searching for answers. We need to feel secure while alive and be assured of a happy afterlife. Anyone who fully understands the human need for these consoling assurances and has a natural ability to lead and control others can create a cult following. In the beginning, most cults are benign and motivated by compassion for others, but as time goes on, the money and the power soon become more important to those who are running the show. The program consists in the leader offering a reward for obedience to his or her doctrines and threatens catastrophe if they are not believed. The teachings are instilled into the thinking process of each member until any thoughts that seem to contradict the group's goals are viewed as evil. Ultimately, there are no more individuals, only a group of conditioned bodies which perfectly represent the teachings of the leader they worship. The former individuals are now prisoners of their own fear and dependency, both of and upon the leader and one another. As this man-made system evolves, the leader shows the usual symptoms of wanting to spread the teachings to the entire world, and the burden for such an undertaking falls upon the obedient followers, who must carry them out or suffer punishment or exclusion from the group if they fail. In spite of rumors and a history of abuse from ex-members, there are always new candidates eager to join because they too are insecure and looking for answers and rewards. The founder knows this and attracts new followers with promises of something fantastic, which always remains just out of reach, but there is always enough going on to keep up the hope. The leader learns by trial and error that providing a steady stream of arguments and prophecies which can't be proven or disproven, and the threatening of anyone who disagrees, will push devotees into a confused state of fear and obedience. In the later stages, the leader becomes hooked on the power of demanding anything he or she wants from the group, the usual cravings of food, money, and sex in increasing quantities, while group members must sacrifice more of themselves to win the approval and spiritual rewards, sometimes called Shaktipat, or just a smile from the master. Ultimately, the prophet is transformed into a god to be worshipped by the surrendered devotee who must give up everything for the beloved. The cultic leader's biggest problem occurs when the prophecies unravel. The deadline for the end of the world comes and goes and nothing happens. Jesus doesn't appear when he is supposed to. Some of the starry-eyed devotees become disillusioned as they discover that their fantasies are not to be fulfilled, only because they didn't try hard enough, and the daily work routine at the ashram or temple is really no different or even worse than what they had as free individuals. The guru or beloved spiritual master who seemed to hold such promise in the beginning begins to mentally and physically abuse them until that first disillusioned worshipper sues the prophet master. The loyal devotees now begin to see their tithing spent on lawyers, and the real world begins to intrude on their spiritual fantasies. It doesn't help when God transmits venereal disease or AIDS and gets old and ugly and can't remember his or her own name. After the enlightened master dies, the teachings have more power than ever because the imagination takes over and the loyal members become carriers of the word, or maybe even start their own splinter group. Many cults that have arisen in this country have a secret weapon that attracts followers much quicker than the established religious institutions. The leader has the ability to transmit ecstasy. There is no doubt that certain physical movements and breathing exercises increase the flow of the life force, and the storing and channeling of such energy can result in a radiant glow which can be felt by others. The glow is a delicious thrill for those who do not have this capacity and want to feel it as much as possible. The danger in this association is that over time the thrill of ecstasy from the master becomes a need and the addiction is formed. The master, who was once a seeker, may now, as an adept, prophet, guru, be exploiting the rewards brought by the increased energy flow, the power, the money, and the sexual favors that the growing membership provides. The more the leader abuses the faithful, the more they surrender. A few of the more resistant ones reach the breaking point and finally flee if they can, but the more desperate and determined hang in there out of desperate need for the master, or the belief that they are being tested for initiation into a higher power level. Having read a number of stories of brainwashed zombie followers handing over their wives and children to an adept, guru, or prophet of God, and even in extremely violent cults upping the stakes to murder and suicide in order to please their boss, I pass. I'd like to believe the vast majority of spiritual groups are relatively benign experiments by men and women with good intentions gatherings of like-minded individuals which come and go and never make it into the news, but there is good reason to approach all of them with caution. The difficulty in recognizing which are beneficial and which are destructive lie in the personal makeup of every member, since in the end a leader's power is derived from the followers. The followers must be strong enough to keep their leader from succumbing to wrong desires and violating the group's own compassionate principles toward others. If this occurs, the honest members must argue with the leader and point out the wrongdoing or quit the group. Any cultic organization that wants to break away from mainstream society and create its own reality, replete with its own rules and the reward of salvation at the end for compliance, is playing a dangerous game. No matter who you are, the same subhuman urges that can create mass murders and dictators can also overtake spiritual leaders who suddenly find themselves able to indulge their bodily cravings and impulses in a big way. All they need to fuel their personal ambitions is to be surrounded by worshipers who are so drunk on love they will refuse them nothing. For an ordinary narcissistic individual to choose to become such a demigod, worshipped by others and no longer accountable to anyone, it's a wild ride over a precipice. And now comes my favorite topic, the cultic wasteland. The last 40 years have brought a marked increase in the number of organizations which have focused their attention on one strange thing after another. When you consider how boring and repetitive life can be at times, it should come as no surprise that the idle brain finds a way to generate more drama. In the 60s, it was the drug-induced hallucinations and God realizations that terrified traditional Christians. After that wave of change passed over the land, there was a period of disillusion when the excitement slowly collapsed into drug overdoses and gang violence. Rents went up, real estate became a good investment, and making money, and lots of it, became more popular than ever. The New Age Eastern cults that replaced the early love and peace toward one another became more focused on idol worship of the guru, who soon became a wealthy spokesperson for God. The most successful, those who got an early start, eventually went global with branches in nearly every country. However, not to be outdone, in their own country, the TV evangelists used a wider medium than books and seminars to spread their message, and soon were gobbling up TV stations, newspapers, and even taking control of the government. Alongside these political religious revivals came a scattering of fringe worshippers of such topics as UFOs, antichrists, aliens, doomsday prophets, Satan, the Holy Grail, Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, conspiracy theories, Area 51, telepathy, telekinesis, teleportation, Bible prophecies, pagan cults, fortune-telling, and psychics predicting the future. These topics are part of the wild and kooky world of the human imagination gone over the cliff and provides us with endless materials that spook and mystify. As children who live in a world of magic, these subjects are fascinating, but as adults, we soon discover they never deliver anything, and it's time to move on.